Thank you.
And I wanted to keep doing that because I did one.
So what's going to happen today is I'm going to do a mini lesson on 4.1b, which is naming covalent compounds. And then you can take it. Would you like to have the rest of the class to work on study notes? Would that be a popular thing? I heard 2 yeses. Yes? Okay. Excellent. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to do this little mini lesson because after your test, the day after the test, you should be ready to do the quiz on this. But it'll be easy. Do you remember how I said the other one was easy? This one is also fairly easy. Okay? So this is page 12 in your green book. Is there anyone who did not get a green book? Yes. Oh, just write down stuff. No. Yeah, I can tell you. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Like really, you just pretend you're like, oh, I'm doing it. You want to actually do it, but yeah, that's all it is. Okay. So you'll hear the word, yes. I can't hear you, sir. You can do it now if you feel ready, yeah? Okay. You can work at your own pace. So if you're feeling like you're ready to go on to quiz 2 or 3 or whatever on your own, that's totally fine. You can do that. Yes. Yeah, for sure.
Thank you.
Okay, binary. Bi means 2. So binary compounds are made from how many elements? 2 elements. There are actually tons of covalent compounds. What does it mean to be a covalent compound? It's going to share its electrons. And it is between 2 nonmetals. So the rules for naming covalent compounds are different than the rules for naming ionic compounds. So that's why you need to know, if my compound starts with a metal, I use the ionic rules. If my compound starts with a nonmetal, it's going to have 2 nonmetals, then I use the covalent rules. Okay? You already know the ionic rules. All you do is name the element, change the N to I. You just wrote a quiz on that. I'm expecting the results to be pretty good, and if they aren't, you'll fix it in like 3 seconds. You know what I mean? It'll be good. Okay. Now, this is a tiny bit more complicated, but it's not too bad. So, remember, covalent bonds form when electrons share. When elements share electrons, and this shows a covalent bond. Why do they share electrons? In order to get a full shell of 8 electrons. How many for hydrogen? 2. And this is a very what kind of arrangement when they have that full shell? Stable. I know you've already told me this, but between what types of elements do covalent bonds form? Non-metal and non-metal. Where do you find the non-metals on the periodic table? On the right. If you have trouble remembering, look up at that periodic table there on the wall beside the clock. The pink ones are the non-metals. The blue ones are the metals. Okay, pink are non-metal, blue are metal. When elements bond covalently, they mostly form little clusters of atoms which are bonded covalently. What do we call those little clusters? Molecules. Okay. We actually have two different names for covalent compounds. We can call them covalent compounds, or we can call them molecular compounds because they are made of molecules. Most of this first page is not stuff that you're going to need to know for Unit 4, but it is a good review for your test on Monday. Okay, so I don't feel bad about throwing it in here. When atoms in a molecule are all the same, so let's see over here, I have a hydrogen and a hydrogen. The atoms are the same. We say that we have a molecule of an element. Yes. Okay, so over here, the hydrogen is an element, oxygen is an element, nitrogen is an element. What do we call it when we have different types of atoms in a molecule? That is a compound, yes. And in Unit 4, we're really interested in naming compounds because the elements are just their element name. Yes?
Mind scrolling outside the table for a quick second?
Like this? Like this?
Yeah, like these things.
Yeah, for sure. Got to make sure I'm going the right way. Yes. Yeah. Are we good to scroll? Awesome. Okay. So we will be naming these molecular compounds, also known as covalent compounds, and they are similar to ionic, but not the same, okay? So let's look at some ionic names that we already know how to do. We have calcium and then fluoride. Cu is copper, and then we have the fluoride. We're going to learn how to use these little Roman numerals later on. Don't worry about them just yet, okay? But when we have a covalent compound, It is carbon, and it's not just oxide, it is carbon dioxide. What do you think di means? Di means 2. But what do you notice is not on the front of carbon? There's nothing there, okay? And we're gonna tell you why in just a little bit. Jonah. How do you decide which one goes first, whichever one is further left on the periodic table? Left and down? Okay. The further up and right you go, those will be second. All right, we also now have PF6, P2F6. So we have 2 phosphorus, so that's why it's diphosphorus. We have 6 chlorine, so that's why it's hexafluoride. But you'll notice the ending of the second word is still changing to ide. So far, so good? And you don't need to know the prefixes just yet. We'll come to them, but ending still changes to ide, and the only thing that's different is we're using these little prefixes to tell us how many of each atom. Okay? So, in a covalent compound, does the first name change? Do we change the ending of the first name? Does it become carbide dioxide? No. Do we have phosphide hexafluoride? No. The first name does not change its ending. Okay? Does the second name change its ending? Yes. Okay. Can you guess what tri means? 3. Look at that. 3 chlorides. How many phosphorus do we have? There is no little number down at the bottom.
1.
We have 1 phosphorus. And so when the first element is 1, is there a prefix at the beginning? Do we write anything at the beginning? When the first element is 1, there is no prefix. What if we have 2 of the first element? Do we use it? Do we use the prefix? Yes. So if we have 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, etc., for the first element, yes, prefix. Second element, always prefix. And if this all seems a bit confusing right now, don't worry, we're going to do a bunch of examples to make it less confusing. So for the first element, we use a prefix if it's anything 2 or above, but we don't use it for 1. Second element, we always use a prefix. It doesn't matter if there's 1, if there's 2, if there's 17, we always use a prefix for the second element. Are we good? So if there's 1 of the first element, do you use a prefix?
No.
If there's 4 of the first element, do you use a prefix? Yes. If there's 2 of the first element, do you use a prefix? Yes. If there's one of the first element, do you use a prefix? No. If there's one of the second element, do you use a prefix?
Yeah.
Yes. If there's 7 of the second, do you use a prefix? Yes. And which ending changes to "ide"? The first word, the second word, or both? Just the second, okay? So, 1 silicon, 2 oxygens. Does silicon use a prefix? No. So it's just silicon. And then the prefix for 2, do you guys remember what it was? Prefix for 2 is di. Dioxide. One carbon, that's our first element. Do we use a prefix? For one of the first element? No, so we just write carbon. Does anyone know what the prefix for 1 is? Starts with an M. Mono. So it's monoxide. Yes. Now the prefix for 1 is technically mono, not just mon. But look what happens if we put that with oxide. Monoxide. What does that look like? It looks like monoxide. Is that a little silly? Okay, monoxide. So there are some rules. We're going to drop the O in front of oxygen or oxide because it looks and sounds weird. Okay? These rules are all written down a little bit later on. I'm just introducing them to you now. Okay? Iodine. There's only one of them. Do we use a prefix? No. So it's just, do I go iodide? No. Iodine. And then the prefix for 4, you probably don't know this one. 4 is tetra. Tetra. Chlor what? Chloride. Good. 2 phosphorus. We have 2 of the first element. Do we use a prefix?
Yeah.
Yes. What's the prefix for 2? Di. So we have di. Phosphide? Is it diphosphide? No, the first element does not change the ending, so it's just diphos for us. And then anyone know a prefix for 5? Penta. And again, because it's in front of oxygen, we're just going to call it pent oxide. Because once again, let's look at pentaoxide. Pentaoxide. Does that look okay? Pentaoxide. It looks weird, yeah? It sounds weird. So we get rid of the A in front of oxide. Okay? To nitrogen. Does that need a prefix?
Yeah.
Yes. What's the prefix for 2? Di. Is it dinitride?
Nitrogen.
Dinitrogen. We have 1 of the second element. Do we need a prefix?
Yeah.
Second element always needs a prefix. What's the prefix for 1? Mono. So it's going to be monosulfide. 3 phosphorus. 5 sulfur. Do you remember the prefix for 3? Tri. Triphos what? Forest. And then how much is 5? What's the penta? Penta sulfide. There's a whole bunch more examples here. What I'd like you to do is I would like you to look through these examples and see if you can answer the questions. What are the prefixes meaning 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10? See if you can figure them out from looking at the examples, or if you already know them. Yeah.
8 is also right.
Octa. Did I leave out 8? I think I left out 8. I don't think I have an 8 there. So I'll put in 8 as octa because I don't have one up there.
What do you think? I'm sorry, look at the wrong. Using big. Yeah, you're fine. There you go.
How are you guys doing? Do you have 1, 2, and 3?
Oh.
What's 1? 1 is mono. 2 is di. 3 is tri. Yes. Huh? There's multiple ones, yes. Do we know 4, 5, and 6? What's 4? Tetra. 5 is penta. And 6 is hexa. What's 7? Hepta. I usually find that the 2 that people have the most trouble remembering are tetra and hepta, followed closely by hexa, which I don't quite get because 6 has an X and hex has an X, right? 6X, hex, X. They both have X. What about 9? Nona. And what about 10? Deca. What prefixes changed when they were in front of either oxygen or oxide? Did mono change? Mono became mon in front of oxide, right? Penta became, what did penta become? Became pent. What did hexa become? Hex. What did hepta become? It became hept. What did tri become? It's the same. So if you have an O or an A in front of oxygen or oxide, you drop it. Okay? So that's the big rule, okay?
Something like this with this can be together.
Is that in front of oxide? No.
So it doesn't matter.
So you wouldn't.
So you can just have a triple value.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, I'll sort them out. What prefix do you use when you have one of the second element? When you have one of the second element, what prefix do you use? Second element, you've got one of them. So let's say we had N2O. What prefix would we use for the O? Mono. What if we have one of the first elements? So what if we had NO2? We've got one of the first element. What prefix would we use? We don't use one, none. Are there any other prefixes that we don't use on the first element? Or is mono the only one we get rid of? The second element will always have a prefix, and the first element will always have a prefix unless what? Unless the prefix would be mono, in which case we leave the prefix off. Yes. Mm-hmm. So the next page just has all the rules I've told you. They're just summarized there. So if you need to look back, you can say, oh, I named the first element using the element's name. The second element we changed to "-ide." Prefixes tell you the number of atoms. Mono is not used on the first element, but it is used on the second element, and you drop the O and the A before oxygen or oxide. So those are the rules. And you should memorize this little chart here: mono, di, tri, tetra, penta, hexa, hepta, octa, nona, deca. If you cannot memorize the chart, I can give you like a little cheat chart, but that counts as 1 mark off on the quiz. Okay? So it's up to you. You can get perfect. If you get perfect, you still get 5 out of 6, which is not bad. Okay?
And you go back up.
Yeah, I'm just gonna let you know that after your test, your homework is going to be to do this page here and get ready for the quiz the next day. And I don't know why I'm making such a mess out of it. I'm very sorry. I'm gonna scroll up again so you can see. Where did you want to go to here?
Just like
Just here? Yeah.
I'm 80% sure.
So for the rest of class, you can spend it making study notes for Unit 3. If you don't know how to make study notes, just pretend you're making a cheat sheet for the test. Okay? And then you just write down what you think you would need to know. Yeah. And you'll be surprised at how much actually goes to stick in your head. Do that. Yes.
Is that close to unit 3 or unit 2 on Monday?
Unit 3 on Monday.
Unit 3, so.
Yes. So that's all about molecules and bonding. Particles,
Right,
matter, bonding.
yeah. Okay, yeah.
Okay?
Got it.
Yeah. And if you're not wanting to make study notes, you can try working on this stuff and be ready for the quiz. It'll be the day after the test. I know, super fun, right?
Yay, so
So fun. I know. I used to go to like really work out anytime we get too expensive and I shouldn't go anymore. And we and she like, it's gonna be super fun today. And I was like, okay, that means it's gonna be really terrible. And I'm gonna swear a lot. Yeah. 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 It was like, okay, wall squats for 2 minutes. I'm like, super fun. Super fun.
we're definitely doing study now.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
You guys just listen to the two guys. That was you work really well for you.
Oh yeah. You know, if you want to give us the answers, you can just say it though. Like I won't. Yeah. I mean, hey, we memorization right there. We memorize the answers. But I will come back. I know.
The first one, it doesn't. The first one doesn't do like boss.
No,
right?
it doesn't change the ending. No, no.
Here.
Yeah, that one was good. That one was good. So you're good. Yeah. Okay, if anybody is on their phone and then they get their test back next week and they're like, oh no, I didn't do as well as I wanted to, and you spent today on your phone, I will not feel too bad for you. I will be like, grumpy Miss Spence. That is not the test. That's the next one. Okay. Nothing that you learned today is on the test. Okay? That's all next year. Yeah, but not always. It's like I so like you know what I mean? It's so something will sound only awesome. Not never. Thank you. Do you know what? That is the best way to go. It really is. I'm trying to train my grade 12s out of like checking everything over and over and over and over. I'm like, You don't have enough time in your life for that. You got better things to do. Go off, enjoy your life a little bit. There we go. All right, so it's on.
So now I can